The following events are based on a true story. Names and details have been altered to protect the identities of those involved, but the horror remains untouched. Watch at your own risk. Story 1. I always thought Yosemite would be the perfect place to unplug. No service, no deadlines, just pine needles and the hiss of the wind through ancient trees. I didn't expect to come back with this story. Honestly, I'm still not sure if we ever left. It started out like every other trip. Me, my wife Jenna, our 7-year-old Sam, and our Labrador Moose. We pitched the tent at a quiet spot near Tenaya Lake. Nothing but granite cliffs and starlight around us. But on the second morning, I noticed something off. Right outside our tent, there was a ring of small rocks arranged in a tight spiral. Each stone had been meticulously placed, almost like a ritual pattern, twisting inward toward a single sharp pebble at the center. Jenna thought it was a ranger prank or maybe some artsy hiker with too much time. Sam just poked it with a stick and laughed. We brushed it off, packed up, and started our hike to the next site on the map. But the next morning it was there again. Same spiral. Only this time, it was closer. By the fourth day, the rocks weren't just closer, they were different. The spiral had shifted slightly, like it had been redrawn by an unsteady hand, and some of the stones had deep grooves scratched into them. Not natural erosion. These were marks, deliberate ones, like tiny claw tracks or symbols I couldn't recognize. Jenna was starting to get nervous, and I could see it in her eyes, even though she kept trying to smile for Sam. We hiked again, farther this time, off trail, relying on my GPS to find a new clearing. We didn't want to talk about the rocks, but they followed us in silence. That night, I didn't sleep much. I kept hearing something outside the tent, soft crunching, like footsteps in loose gravel, pausing and starting again. Every time I worked up the nerve to unzip the flap and shine my flashlight, there was nothing. Just black woods and the gentle shimmer of moonlight on the trees. But when dawn broke, the spiral was there again. Right in front of our tent. Moose barked like crazy at it, hackles up, tail stiff. Jenna didn't say anything this time. She just stared at the formation like she was trying to remember something she'd forgotten. We decided to pack up for real and head back to the car. No more detours, no more scenic routes, just straight out. But when we got to the lot where we'd parked 3 days earlier, the car wasn't there. At first I thought we were lost, that maybe I'd misread the trail markers. But then I saw it. A crushed beer can Jenna had dropped the day we arrived, lying exactly where she'd left it next to the fire ring. Same dents, same rust. We weren't in a new spot. We were back at the same goddamn campsite. I reset the GPS. Full battery. It showed our location, but it hadn't changed since yesterday. Even after hours of hiking, the pin stayed exactly where we started. No movement. I checked my watch, 2:13 p.m., but it had been 2:13 p.m. for over 40 minutes. Jenna's phone still had a charge, but the screen was frozen on our lock screen, glowing dimly like it was stuck in a trance. That night, we didn't even bother putting up the tent. We just sat by the cold ashes of our last fire, wrapped in blankets, staring at the treetops. Sam asked why the moon wasn't moving. That night, I dreamt of rocks. Thousands of them, clicking into place on their own, crawling across the forest floor like insects forming patterns I couldn't understand. When I woke up, I was outside. Not just outside the blanket, but 20 feet from Jenna and Sam, standing barefoot in the middle of a fresh spiral. My feet were bleeding. Moose was growling low beside me, but not at me. He was staring into the woods, tail tucked, eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. I called out to Jenna and my voice sounded distant, like I was shouting through water. We didn't talk about it. What was there to say? Every time we tried to leave, we woke up back, at the same spot. Same crooked pine tree, same ring of ash. The spiral moved closer each morning, inch by inch, until by the 8th day it was around our tent, encircling us. Jenna stopped pretending. She cried when she thought I wasn't looking. Sam kept asking why we were camping forever. I started marking trees as we walked, deep slashes with my knife, but they never stayed. The bark would heal overnight, like the forest was erasing us. On the 9th night, I buried the GPS under a stack of rocks half a mile from camp, just to see. The next morning, it was sitting neatly beside my sleeping bag, clean, unscratched, as if it had never been moved. That's when Jenna broke. She started screaming into the trees, begging whoever or whatever was doing this to let us go. Moose barked until he choked, and Sam was trembling, clutching his stuffed rabbit so hard its seams started to split. I tried to stay calm, but every rational part of me had already crumbled. We weren't lost. We were being kept. The spiral didn't appear the next morning. For a second, I thought, maybe it was over. Maybe it had given up. But then I noticed the dirt under the tent had been disturbed. Something had moved the entire structure and set it back down. There were small prints around the edges of the canvas, not animal tracks. Toes. Long, narrow toes like a child's, but too long, too thin. That night the wind didn't blow, the trees didn't move. Everything was so still it felt like the forest itself was holding its breath. Last night, I didn't sleep. None of us did. We sat by the dead fire, listening. There were whispers in the trees, low, rhythmic, almost like chanting, but when I leaned in to hear, they stopped. Sam asked why the stars looked wrong, and I realized he was right. They weren't where they should be. The Big Dipper was upside down. Orion was missing. The sky itself felt rearranged. Jenna held my hand so tight it hurt. Moose wouldn't stop staring into the forest. Then just before dawn, I saw them. Shapes, standing perfectly still at the tree line. Watching. This morning, we woke up. Somewhere new, but it wasn't better. The trees are thinner here and the air smells metallic like old coins and burnt hair. No trails, no lake, just the same tent, the same fire ring, the same spiral, now etched into the earth itself, deep, enough that even Moose won't go near it. We don't know where we are or if time is even moving anymore. If anyone finds this, please don't look for us. I don't think we're supposed to leave. And whatever's out here, whatever's keeping us, it's still watching. Closer. Now. Story 2. I've worked at Yellowstone for nearly 20 years. You get used to weird things. Stray wildlife, unpredictable tourists, and the occasional conspiracy nut convinced the park hides aliens or ancient civilizations. I used to laugh at those stories. But lately, I've stopped laughing. Something's wrong near Old Faithful. And I'm not talking about the usual geothermal oddities. I mean something deeper. Something that doesn't feel natural. I don't scare easily, but I've started carrying my sidearm when I patrol there at night. Not for bears, for something else. The first time it happened, we thought it was a prank. A pair of hiking boots, laced and placed side by side on the wooden boardwalk near the geyser, like someone had stepped out of them and vanished. No footprints, no bags, no ID, just the shoes. 2 days later, it happened again. Different size, different brand, same eerie precision. By the 4th incident, we'd closed off the area after dark. I was the one assigned to review the footage, and what I saw made my stomach turn. The footage was black and white, grainy but clear enough. It was around 12:03 a.m. when the steam thickened in a way that didn't look right. Too fast, too dense, like it was being pushed out. Then they appeared. Shadowy figures, tall and thin, stepping silently out of the vapor. No sound, no motion blur. Just there. Their movements were wrong, jerky, like frames missing in a film reel. And behind them, a man. A tourist from the lodge, still in pajamas, walking barefoot, eyes wide open. Following them, not resisting, not afraid. Just walking. I called in the others. Park management, a guy from law enforcement, even a wildlife specialist. No one could explain it. The man was gone by morning. No trace except for his slippers left in perfect alignment where the figures had stood. The official report said he'd wandered off and likely got lost. I wanted to believe that. But I kept watching the video, frame by frame, over and over. I zoomed in. On the last frame before the steam swallowed them again, one of the figures turned toward the camera. And I swear to God, it was wearing a ranger's uniform. That night, I stayed out near the geyser. I brought a thermal scope, hoping to catch, some kind of animal or heat signature, anything that could explain what I'd seen. Midnight came, and with it the usual eruption. But the steam lingered too long this time. It clung to the boardwalk like fog trapped in a bottle. I scanned the area, but the scope gave me nothing. Not cold, not warm, just blank, like whatever was in that mist didn't register as alive. And then I heard footsteps. Not heavy, bare. Soft padding across the planks behind me. I turned fast, nothing. Just the hiss of the geyser and the smell of minerals in the air. But something was different. The boardwalk felt off, like the planks had warped under a weight they weren't supposed to carry. I knelt to look closer and saw a wet footprint, bare, small, like a child's. But there were no children reported missing. Not yet. I stood, up quickly, flashlight sweeping the fog. That's when I heard whispering, too faint to catch, but too deliberate to be the wind. Dozens of voices overlapping as if they were trying to agree on something, or decide. I didn't sleep after that. I told my supervisor I was doing extra rounds for public safety, but really I just couldn't. Stay away. I needed to know what this was. Every night, the same, midnight, thick steam, the faint sound of bare feet. And always, just as the mist began to clear, shoes. Different sizes, brands, neatly aligned, never warm, never wet. One night I found a pair that looked familiar. Hiking boots with a tear in the leather tongue. I checked our staff registry. They belonged to a seasonal volunteer who'd gone home. Weeks ago, or so we thought. I started asking questions, quiet ones, old rangers who'd retired, maintenance guys who'd been around since the 80s. Most brushed me off. But one, Al Carter, looked pale when I mentioned the shoes. He said it used to happen more often back when the park was less crowded. Fewer eyes, fewer questions. He wouldn't say much else except one thing. If you hear your name in the steam, don't answer. Doesn't matter who it sounds like, it's not them. I asked him what he meant. He just walked away, muttering something about echoes that don't belong. The next night I heard it. I was sitting on the bench near the perimeter fence, thermal scope in my lap, when the steam began to roll in heavy and fast. I was ready for the figures. What I wasn't ready for was the voice. My brother's, he died 3 years ago in a car crash. But there it was, clear as day, calling my name from the mist. Calm, steady, exactly the way he used to when we were kids and I'd wandered too far from home. Come here, Nate, it's okay. I froze, my body screamed to run, but my legs moved on their own. One step onto the boardwalk. I stopped myself at the edge. The fog pulsed like it was breathing. I backed away, repeating to myself, "It's not him. It's not him." Then I saw movement. 3 figures just beyond visibility. One raised a hand, slowly beckoning. Behind them stood another person. A woman this time, barefoot, dazed, following in silence. Her eyes locked onto mine for a second. Just a second. And in that moment, her expression changed. Her mouth opened like she wanted to scream, but no sound came out. Then they vanished. Gone. Like the geyser swallowed them whole. The next morning, I filed a false report. Said the cameras glitched. The shoes were probably forgotten by careless tourists. I couldn't explain any of it. Not in a way that wouldn't get me benched or sent in for evaluation. But I did one thing before ending my shift. I rewound the footage from the night before, frame by frame, and there she was, the woman I'd seen. Just for a moment, barely visible behind the steam. But it wasn't just her. In the same frame, frozen mid-step was me, standing on the boardwalk, only I never left the bench. I've since transferred out of Yellowstone. Couldn't stay after that, couldn't sleep. But sometimes, just before I drift off, I hear footsteps. Not loud, bare, on hardwood floors that shouldn't creak. And once, only once, I woke up to find my boots at the foot of the bed, laces tied, neatly aligned. I didn't put them there. I don't know if this thing ever really ends. But if you're ever at Old Faithful around midnight and you hear someone you trust calling your name, don't follow. And if you see the shoes, walk away before something walks out to meet you. Story 3. I've always loved the quiet of the woods, that kind of deep silence you only get miles away from the nearest road. where even the birds seemed to respect it. When my best friend Tyler and I set out to hike a stretch of the Appalachian Trail near Smoky Mountains National Park, we weren't chasing danger, just solitude. We packed light, stuck to marked paths, and made a rule to be off trail before dusk. It was our third night out when we found the tent. Old, sun-bleached, half-collapsed like it had been abandoned in a hurry. First, we figured it belonged to someone long gone, until we looked inside. The tent was a mess. Sleeping bags still zipped, food scattered like someone had left mid-meal. And then we saw the notebook. It was lying near the flap, open, pages, warped from damp. The handwriting was shaky, slanted, rushed. Tyler read aloud, and I swear with every sentence the air got colder. The entries talked about someone, or something, following the writer. "Only when I'm alone," one line said, "but I keep hearing it breathing at the edge of the trees." Another page. "I tried to leave, but the forest just brings me back." We didn't say much after that, just packed up fast and moved. 2 miles south before setting up camp. That night, neither of us really slept. Every creak of the trees, every rustle of leaves felt amplified, like the woods were leaning in to listen. At some point past midnight, Tyler whispered, "Do you think it was real? The stuff in the diary?" I didn't answer right away. I didn't want to admit that I'd been thinking the same thing. We both kept our flashlights close, ears straining for anything that didn't sound like wind or animals. But nothing happened. Just darkness. Just silence. And by morning, we were half laughing it off, like maybe the guy who wrote that journal was just cracked from being alone too long. But when I unzipped my sleeping bag, I froze. Something was lying between us, right on the flattened space where our bags nearly touched. It was the same notebook. No dirt on it, no signs it had been dropped or carried. Just placed. Perfectly. Centered. Tyler went pale. "That wasn't here last night," he muttered, like saying it out loud might undo it. I picked it up with shaking hands, and this time, the pages were different. Newer. Dated with yesterday's date. And worse. Way worse, it described everything we did the day before. What we ate, where we moved camp. Even Tyler's offhand joke about raccoons stealing his socks. Word for word. We didn't speak for a long time. Tyler just stared at the journal like it might catch fire in his hands. I kept glancing around, half expecting someone to step out from behind a tree, laughing, saying it was all a prank. But there was no one. Just trees. Miles and miles of trees in every direction. "We need to go," I finally said. My voice sounded strange, flat and distant, like it wasn't mine. Tyler nodded, and we packed up in record time, barely speaking. I kept that damn notebook in my pack, unsure why I didn't just toss it. Maybe I wanted proof. Or maybe part of me thought burning. It would make things worse. We hiked all morning, sticking to the main trail, checking over our shoulders every few minutes. Other hikers passed us, smiling, unaware, and for a moment I wondered if we were overreacting. But then we found the cairn, a small stack of stones, perfectly balanced, in the exact center of the path. On top was a piece of paper, folded once. I didn't want to open it, but my hand moved before I could think. Just 4 words scrawled in that same jittery handwriting. "It knows you know." That was when Tyler lost it. He started yelling into the woods, demanding to know who was out there, but there was no answer. Just the sound of leaves shifting, like something slipping just out of sight. We decided not to stop again, not until we reached the ranger station, which was still nearly a day's hike away. But the trail felt different now. It twisted in ways we didn't remember, curved around, hills that weren't on the map. At one point, Tyler swore we passed the same broken tree 3 times, even though we'd been walking straight. Around late afternoon, my phone buzzed. 1 notification, no signal, no service, just a single note in my reminders app. "Don't look behind you." I hadn't said it. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the phone. Tyler didn't say anything. He just stared past me, eyes wide, fixed on something I didn't want to turn and see. We walked faster. Then we ran, but it didn't matter. The woods didn't let us leave. Every path brought us somewhere we'd already been. An old campsite, a fallen log, even that goddamn cairn. The paper was gone now, but the stones remained. At some point, the sun dipped behind the trees and everything got darker than it should, like the shadows came early just for us. We finally collapsed near a stream, too exhausted to keep running, hearts hammering like they might burst. "We'll wait until morning," I said. "Maybe we're just turned around. Maybe we'll see better in daylight." But we both knew better. The forest didn't want us to see. That night was worse than the last. The air felt heavier, like it was pressing against our skin, trying to seep in. I kept hearing things, soft footsteps that stopped when I turned. My head, faint breathing that didn't match ours. Tyler sat up most of the night, flashlight aimed at the trees, lips moving silently like he was praying. At some point, I must have dozed off. When I woke up, the fire had died, and everything was pitch black. Then I saw it again, lying between our sleeping bags. The notebook open this time, pages fluttering slightly, like something had just pulled its hand away. There was a new entry, written in the same scrawl, but different, smoother, more confident. It described us sleeping, breathing, even how many times Tyler had blinked. I couldn't look away from the last line. "They'll wake up at 3:17 a.m. One of them will be alone." I checked my watch. 3:16. My breath caught in my throat. I reached out blindly, searching for Tyler, but my hand hit nothing. No sleeping bag, no body, just cold earth where he should have been. I stood up, spinning in circles with my flashlight, calling his name. Nothing. No reply, no footsteps, no rustle of movement. Just the quiet roar of the forest pressing in on all sides. Then I saw it. Not Tyler, but something else. A figure maybe 20 feet away, just beyond the tree line. Perfectly still. Wrong somehow. Its proportions didn't make sense. It didn't move, didn't breathe. Just watched. And when I shone the light directly at it, there was nothing there. Just trees. I turned back and the notebook was gone again. Like it had never been there. Like it had followed him instead. I never found Tyler. I stumbled out of the woods just after sunrise, delirious and half-frozen. The ranger said I'd been missing for 2 days longer than I remember. I tried to tell them what happened, but the words sounded insane even to me. I've gone through my gear 100 times since then. Everything is accounted for except the notebook. Sometimes I think I hear scratching when I sleep, like someone writing. But every morning I check between the sheets, terrified I'll find it again. I haven't yet, but if I do, I don't think it'll stop at writing. Story 4. I always felt safest behind the lens. Landscapes didn't lie. Shadows didn't move unless I told them to. That's why I started solo shooting at night. There was something pure about the stillness. Last October, I camped alone at Joshua Tree National Park for a week-long astrophotography project. The days were uneventful. Dry air, wide skies, and sunburn. But the night, something felt off. Not dangerous, just observed. Like the desert was watching, waiting. The first time I noticed the eyes, I thought it was a camera glitch. Just 2 small reflections, greenish faint, hovering near a cluster of rocks in my long exposure frame. I shrugged it off as a coyote or maybe a jackrabbit. Wildlife doesn't pose for photos, I told myself. But when I zoomed in, the eyes weren't the right distance apart. Too close together. Too symmetrical. I deleted the photo and didn't think much of it. Until the next night, when they showed up again. Each night, the eyes appeared in my photos. Always in different spots. Perched. On distant ridges nestled between boulders. Sometimes just beyond the range of my headlamp. They never moved. Never blinked. I tried switching lenses, adjusting ISO, cleaning the sensor. Same result. I even left the shutter open while I stood in frame, waving my flashlight around like an idiot. Nothing showed up in real time, but the photo always revealed them, dozens of them now. I stopped showing the images to anyone. My sister said I needed sleep. My editor thought I was faking it for clicks. Maybe they were right. Maybe my mind was playing tricks. Still, I started sleeping with my gear zipped into the tent with me, and my car keys under my pillow. I positioned my tent so the entrance faced away from the rocks. Those damn rocks. and I avoided looking in that direction after dark. But the feeling of being watched grew heavier, like the air itself was holding its breath. On the fourth night, I woke. Cold. Not just chilly, frozen. My sleeping bag was unzipped, my tent door wide open, and my boots were sitting neatly outside, side by side. I hadn't done that. I never leave the tent unzipped, especially in the desert. Heart pounding, I scrambled out, sweeping my flashlight. Around the campsite, nothing. Just the wind brushing through the Joshua trees. I snapped a photo instinctively, habit maybe, and there they were. Eyes, so many more than before. They weren't dots in the distance anymore. They were closer. A ring of them, symmetrical, calculated, surrounding the entire site. I couldn't count them all. I didn't want to. I backed into the tent and zipped it up, clutching my tripod like a weapon. No sound, no footsteps, just silence, and that strange, pulsing awareness that something was still out there, waiting. When I finally drifted into a fitful sleep, it was with my camera pressed to my chest like it might save me. At sunrise, the eyes were gone, but the photos were still on my memory card, more vivid than ever. I packed up, fast. No breakfast, no second guessing. I shoved everything into the trunk and sped off down the narrow road that snakes through the park. My plan was simple: get to the visitor center, get out of the park, and never come back. But the miles stretched unnaturally. I drove for what felt like hours. The same scrubby bushes, the same twisted trees, the same jagged horizon. When I finally saw the rock formation again, my stomach dropped. It was the same spot I'd camped, exactly the same. My gear was gone, but the imprint of my tent was still in the dirt, like it hadn't been long since I left. I turned the car around, drove in the opposite direction. Same thing. The formation reappeared, like the road was folding in on itself, trapping me in a loop. That's when I noticed the eyes again. Not through the lens this time, just there, lining the rocks in broad daylight, and they were closer. I hit the gas. Dust kicked up behind me as the tires spun, skidding on loose gravel. I didn't care. I just needed out. But no matter which way I turned, no matter how fast I drove, the road always brought me back to that same cursed formation. And each time I returned, the eyes were waiting, brighter now, glowing with a sickly white light, unblinking. They didn't chase me. They didn't need to. I was already theirs. As night fell again, the headlights began to dim. Not flicker but fade, like the darkness was swallowing them whole. I sat in the driver's seat, engine idling, hands trembling on the wheel. I didn't want to look out the window, but I could feel them, closer, pressing in from every side. Then, from the corner of my eye, something moved. Not outside. In the back seat, just a flicker. A shape that hadn't been there before. Turned around slowly. Nothing, just my backpack, my tripod. But something was off. The gear wasn't where I'd left it. It was perfectly arranged, like a display. The camera rested on the seat, lens pointed straight at me. I didn't remember putting it there. I reached for it with a shaking hand, and before I could touch it, the shutter clicked on its own. A single photo. I looked at the preview screen. My face was centered, framed, and behind me, just outside the car window, a wall of eyes stared back. I don't remember falling asleep. I don't remember getting home. But the camera was in my apartment the next morning. Battery full, memory card intact. Every photo was there except the last one. That frame was gone, deleted, wiped clean like it never existed. I tried going back to Joshua Tree, but the entrance doesn't look the same anymore. The roads don't lead there, and sometimes late. At night, I'll catch a reflection in my window. 2 glowing dots perfectly still, watching. If you've ever camped out there, check your photos. Story 5. I used to think national parks were the safest places on Earth. Vast, protected, untouched by the chaos of city life. But after what happened in Zion, I can't close my eyes without hearing that sound. Faint, distant, like someone laughing into a hollow cave. The first night I brushed it off. Probably other campers, I told myself. People talk, drink, joke around. But something about the rhythm of that laughter, it was too slow, too drawn out. Almost like it was waiting for something. My girlfriend Lara nudged me awake around 2 a.m. "Do you hear that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind rustling our tent. I listened. There it was again. The same laughter, barely a whisper, but this time closer. I unzipped the tent and poked my head out. No lanterns, no movement, no sounds but the crickets and that strange, echoing giggle bouncing off the canyon walls. We were alone. We knew that when we set up camp in the backcountry, miles away from the nearest site. And yet, someone, or something, was laughing just beyond the trees. The second night, it returned. This time, closer. It didn't start as laughter. It was a low murmur, like someone talking to themselves in the dark. I sat up, ears straining, and realized it was repeating something. A single word, help. Over and over. At first it sounded like a woman's voice, then it shifted, deeper, more desperate. Help, help. The weirdest part? It sounded exactly like Lara. I shook her awake, panicking, but she was already sitting up, eyes wide. "That's you," she whispered. "That's your voice." We sat frozen in the dark, listening to ourselves cry for help from somewhere we couldn't see. When the sun rose, we searched. Every direction from our site, we walked a mile or two. Nothing. No gear, no campers, not even footprints. Just stone, trees, and the canyon stretching on forever. I considered packing up and leaving, but Lara insisted it was probably some kind of echo trick. "Voices bounce in weird ways out here," she said, though her hands trembled when she poured coffee. That day dragged. Every snap of a twig, every gust of wind had us looking over our shoulders. But the real horror didn't come until the third night, when the voice began screaming. It didn't build up. It started all at once. Sharp, agonized screams tearing through the dark like someone was being ripped apart. We bolted upright, both of us grabbing our flashlights. The voice wasn't just screaming, it was begging. "Please don't, no! Please!" Then silence. Then the laughter again, soft and shaking as if it had been crying. The voice didn't echo like the others had. It was right outside the tent. I swear I saw a shadow pass along the nylon wall, but when I yanked the zipper open, there was nothing. Just darkness, and the trees swaying gently in the moonlight. We didn't sleep after that. At dawn, we agreed we were leaving. We packed everything in record time and started down the trail we came in on. But within an hour, things got strange. The markers on the trees, little orange ribbons tied by rangers, were gone. The path started twisting in odd directions, looping around itself, leading us back toward camp. We used GPS, but the signal was gone. Lara's compass spun slowly, like it couldn't find true north. "We're not lost," I kept saying, even though I knew we were. The air felt wrong, heavy, like something was watching from just out of sight. By late afternoon, we somehow ended up right back at our campsite. Same fire ring, same prints in the dirt from our gear. But we had hiked in a straight line. We were sure of it. Lara started crying quietly at first, then harder. I wanted to comfort her, but I was too busy trying not to lose it myself. As the sun dipped behind the canyon wall, the temperature dropped fast. We made a fire, ate a little, and tried to act normal. But that night, the forest didn't even pretend. The sounds came back, louder, closer, more voices. This time, they were all us. Me, Lara, sometimes laughing, sometimes screaming. At one point, I heard my own voice shout, "Run!" followed by frantic footsteps circling the tent. Lara clutched my arm so tightly her nails broke the skin. I whispered to her not to move, not to make a sound. But then one of the voices, my voice, called out again, soft and pleading. "Lara, it's me. I'm out here. Please, let me in." The zipper to the tent twitched. I held my breath, heart hammering so loudly I thought it would give us away. It didn't open, not then. But neither of us slept. We just sat there, waiting for the sun, afraid to speak. At sunrise, we didn't speak. We just started walking. Any direction, as long as it was away. The woods felt unfamiliar now, like they were subtly shifting when we weren't looking. Trees we'd passed before seemed to lean in closer. The air smelled sweet, almost rotten like decaying fruit. Every once in a while we'd hear faint footsteps behind us, but when we turned, nothing. No animals, no people, just silence. At one point we found an old ranger sign, weather-worn and almost unreadable, but it pointed in a direction, so we followed it. It led us in a straight line, back to our own abandoned tent. That's when Lara snapped. She screamed, kicked the tent over, and hurled our packs into the brush. "We're not leaving," she shouted at the woods, at whatever was out there. "You hear me? You can't keep us here." I tried to calm her, but then I heard it again, my voice right behind me. "Lara, don't listen to him, he's not me." I turned around, flashlight shaking in my hand. Nothing, just empty forest. I looked back at Lara. She was staring at me now, wide-eyed, like she wasn't sure if I was real anymore. As night fell, the forest exploded with noise. Voices screamed, cried, laughed, all from different directions, none belonging to anyone we could see. We huddled near the remains of our fire, clutching each other like that would anchor us to reality. Then something changed. The voices stopped all at once, like they were holding their breath. The quiet was worse. Then we heard footsteps, slow, deliberate, approaching from every side. The last thing I remember clearly is Lara whispering, "It's in my head." I don't know if she meant the voices or something else, but she wouldn't stop saying it, over and over. I woke up alone. No voices, no footsteps, just morning light filtering through the trees. Lara was gone. No footprints. No blood. Just her necklace lying in the ashes of our fire. I searched for hours, days maybe. It's all a blur now. Eventually, a ranger found me wandering near the main trail, dehydrated and incoherent. They said I must have gotten lost, that Lara probably fell or ran off. They think I imagined everything. But I hear it still, every night. That slow, hollow laugh echoing through the trees. And sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I hear my voice whispering from the dark, "Help. Please, don't leave me here." Story 6. I should have trusted my gut the moment I picked up that compass. It wasn't part of my gear. I found it half buried in the dirt near the edge of a ridge, its face scratched and its needle twitching like it had a heartbeat of its own. I was 3 days into my solo hike through Acadia National Park, trying to unplug from everything. No service, no people, just me and the silence of the forest. That was the whole point. But the moment I turned the compass over in my hand and saw the rusted inscription, "Follow," something in me shifted. I don't know why I didn't just leave it there. Maybe because it pointed somewhere no map I had ever seen acknowledged. At first I thought it was broken. The compass pointed northeast, but not in the direction of any marked trail. Still, every time I adjusted my position, the needle realigned, always to the same direction, unwavering. Against my better judgment, I veered off trail. The deeper I went, the quieter it became. No birdsong, no wind, just the crunch of my boots and the increasingly uneasy rhythm of my breath. Then I noticed something stranger. The forest floor was always clean, no fallen branches, no decay, just smooth earth and unnatural symmetry. That's when I found the, first one, an old torn hiking boot placed neatly on a tree stump, with a folded piece of paper wedged inside. The note was damp and yellowed, the handwriting barely legible, like whoever wrote it had been trembling. "Don't trust the compass. It doesn't point north. It points to them." I stood frozen, rereading that line over and over, trying to decide if it was some kind of joke. But who would come all the way out here just to prank someone? I glanced back in the direction I'd come from, expecting to see the faint impression of my footprints in the dirt. They were gone. The forest behind me looked different, deeper, thicker, like it had closed in while I wasn't looking. I shoved the note into my pocket and kept walking, telling myself I'd only go a bit further before turning back. But the compass kept tugging at me. Every few steps I'd glance down and see it shaking with anticipation. It didn't just point anymore. It pulled. And as I followed, I found more things. A canteen split clean down the middle, a pair of sunglasses with one lens melted, Each item perched on rocks or logs, arranged too perfectly to be accidental. And each one had a note. Some were warnings, others were just desperate ramblings. Fragments of thoughts, apologies, names repeated over and over again. I found the tent around dusk, or what was left of it. The fabric was slashed, poles snapped like twigs, and the ground was littered with torn clothing and damp pages from a journal. The entries were smeared and half erased by water, but one line stood out, etched deep in pen over and over again. "It doesn't let you leave." That line sank into my stomach, like a stone. I turned in a slow circle, suddenly aware of how far I was from everything. No cell signal, no trail. No one even knew I was here. The silence wasn't just silence anymore. It was watching. That's when I noticed the trees. I mean, really noticed them. Their trunks weren't straight. They bent slightly inward, leaning toward the direction I had come from, like they'd shifted over time or weren't trees at all. I couldn't stop shaking. Every logical part of my brain screamed at me to go back. I tried retracing my steps, but the forest wouldn't let me. Every landmark I passed, those twisted roots, that oddly shaped boulder, appeared again and again, like I was circling something, or it was circling me. Night fell fast, too fast. One moment there was a sliver of light filtering through the trees. The next, everything was swallowed in shadow. I didn't even have time to set up camp. I just kept walking, guided by the compass's flickering needle and the gnawing sense that if I stopped, something would catch up. At one point I heard footsteps behind me. Not animals, heavy, deliberate steps like boots on damp earth. I whipped around with my flashlight, heart hammering. Nothing, just trees. But they looked closer than before, tighter, like the forest was holding its breath. I finally stopped when I saw the fire. A small flickering flame in a clearing ahead. Impossible because I hadn't seen any smoke. No scent of burning wood. But the light was there, and beside it, something even more impossible. My backpack. The same one I had strapped on that morning, now resting neatly by the flames, untouched like it had been waiting for me. My skin went cold. I approached slowly, and that's when I saw it. Another note resting against the bag, pinned under a stone. I picked it up with trembling fingers. The paper was newer than the others, not weathered, not stained, crisp, like it had just been written. My throat went dry as I read the first line. "You don't have much time." The handwriting. It was mine. I know how that sounds. I know what you're thinking. But I stared at the loops in the letters, the way the capital Y curved just slightly to the left. I've written thousands of field notes, and this was unmistakably mine. I dropped the note like it burned and backed away from the fire, from the bag, from all of it. But curiosity is a sickness. I couldn't stop myself from going back, picking the paper up again, reading the rest. It was dated tomorrow. The words that followed were short, rushed, panicked. "You followed it too far. You'll try to turn back, but it won't let you. By nightfall tomorrow, you won't be here anymore. Not really. Leave this note. Someone else will find it." My ears were ringing, my vision tunneled. I looked around the clearing, suddenly terrified that I was already being watched by something I couldn't name, something I'd led myself straight to. I ran. I don't remember picking a direction. I just ran, crashing through underbrush, branches tearing at my arms. I didn't stop until my legs gave out beneath me. When I looked up, the trees had changed again. The clearing was gone. The fire, the backpack, gone. I was somewhere else entirely, the compass still clutched in. My hand, its needle spinning wildly now, no longer pointing. Anywhere, or maybe pointing everywhere. I hurled it as far as I could into the dark, but I swear I still hear the faint ticking of its needle when I try to sleep. I never found my way back. Search and rescue eventually picked me up after I stumbled onto a service road days later, dehydrated and incoherent. They said I was lucky. I don't feel lucky. I haven't told anyone what really happened, what I really saw. But last night I found something tucked under my pillow. A note. My handwriting again. One line. It starts over tomorrow. If Anyone reading this is planning a solo hike. Don't pick up anything that isn't yours, especially not a compass.